Students, welcome back, you beautiful people. It's been a hot minute, I know. I'm going to be posting up a devlog soon that's going to discuss a few things, but here we go. We're adding back in our arrow ability here today. So stick around and let's get started. Okay, welcome back everybody. It's been a minute. I'm going to be talking about why the extended absence yet again in a devlog. I'll be posting on YouTube relatively soon, but I knew that if my first video back wasn't more Zelda, I'd get a little bit of pushback, which is fine. I understand why people like it, and to be honest, this is the series that most people signed up for. So just to remind you where we were from last time. We have a little ability system, or at least the framework of one, with one ability working. So if I press Control, the player dashes forward, and I can do this when the player is moving or not moving. And if I try to dash into a physics collider, I can't do that. Camera's a little janky. I need to put some smoothing on that, but that's not a video thing, that's a me thing. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be reworking the arrow ability, which we already had in the game, but I'm turning it into its own thing now. So what I want to do here is I want to go into my scripts, and I want to go into my abilities, and I'm going to create a new C# script. I'm going to call this one, we'll call it arrow ability. And I was not thinking and didn't open up Visual Studio, so I'm going to open up Visual Studio here, and I'll meet you right back. Okay, so here we are back. I've been asked by one of the comments what my Visual Studio theme is, and I'm pretty sure it's Solarized Dark, which you have to get from like an extended theme pack, but I didn't pay any money for it, so I think you just have to download that extended theme pack. But anyway. So this arrow ability, I want it to inherit from generic ability. Generic ability. And in generic ability, I have my virtual void ability. So I'm just going to copy this into my arrow ability. And this is going to be an override. All right. So we need the player position, we need the facing direction, we don't need the animator for this, and we don't need the rigid body for this. So what we want to do, we will need to know what the projectile itself is. And this doesn't have to be an arrow. I could just as easily have called this like projectile ability, but I'm going to keep it with arrow. Well, no, I'm going to change it projectile. And this actually shows one thing. So if you want to change the name of your class after you've created it, you can change this to up here. But now if you go into Unity, you'll get an error because the name of the file doesn't match the name of the class. So if we go into Unity here, to fix that error, and you don't have to spell correctly, you just have to spell consistently. I need to change this from being arrow ability to being projectile ability. So you don't have to spell it correctly, just consistently between the name of the file and the name of the class. So back into Visual Studio. Oh yeah, and since I did that, Visual Studio didn't know it had it open, so I need to reopen it. All right, so we're going to make a game object that is the projectile that we're creating. So I'm going to do this as a serialized field. Private game object, and we'll call it this projectile. And then we want to create the projectile at the player's position. So we're going to create it as an object that we're going to cache in memory so that we can do some stuff with it. So I'm going to create I'm going to call this game object, no, not this projectile. We'll call it new projectile is equal to instantiate, and whenever you call instantiate, you have to tell it what to instantiate, which is going to be this projectile, where to instantiate it, which is going to be the player position, and with what rotation you want to instantiate it. Now, in this case, I want the projectile to rotate to whichever direction the player is facing. So I'm going to have to do a quick little bit of math here. So we already have the player facing direction, which is what that other vector 2 is, which represents xy. I can change that from xy into a rotation degrees, and then I can change it from rotation degrees into a quaternion, which is what Unity expects. So I'm going to make a quick little float here, and I'm going to call this facing rotation, and this is going to be equal to mathf.atan2, so that we don't get a divide by 0 error, and player facing direction dot y, player facing direction dot x. Cool. And then that's just a float though. I need to turn this into a quaternion. So to make this a quaternion, I'm really only going to be rotating it on the x direction. I'm going to do vector 3, and we'll call this rotation vector is equal to quaternion.Euler, and then I have to give it an x, a y, and a z rotation. So my x rotation is 0, my y rotation is the facing rotation, and my z rotation is 0. And I'm doing the f because it expects floats. Uh-oh. Oh, it's not. Okay, it's... I don't have to do that. I don't have to make that vector. I forgot about that. I always forget exactly how to convert between a vector 3 and a quaternion. So quaternion.Euler 0f facing rotation 0f. Alright, cool. So I didn't need that. Let's make this a little bit more readable. There we go. So this is creating the projectile and giving the projectile a direction. And now I need to have a way to have the projectile start moving in a specific direction. But before I do that, I want to just test to make sure that what I've done right now works. So I'm going to go into my scriptable objects, my abilities, and I'm going to make a new... Oh, I forgot to make the create asset menu stuff here. So in order to create my generic ability, I need to add create asset menu, and this is going to be file name equals and menu name equals. And I need to know, so I've got scriptable objects, abilities, and then this is going to be projectile ability. So I'm going to copy this and put this in here. So I just took that from my dash ability, and instead of calling it dash ability, I'm going to call it projectile ability. And the menu name, oh no, wait. Good lord, I've got those backwards. So this should be the menu name. Pretty sure I can't just reverse those, but maybe I can. Did I reverse them on? Yeah, I can reverse them. Nice. So this is going to be file name, and the file name is going to be new projectile ability. All right, cool. So back in Unity here, I'm going to let that compile for a moment. Then I'm going to create scriptable objects, abilities, projectile ability. And I'm going to call this one arrow. And my magic cost is going to be 2, and we'll say my duration is 0.3. My player magic is... Which one is the player magic? So player magic notification, player max magic, so it's that one. So the arrow needs to get this as its player magic. Use player magic is the signal, and the projectile. So now I need to make a game object for it. In my art folder, I am going to... Do I want to use one of these arrows? I don't think so. No, I'm going to go into Zelda-like here. And, oh no, I can't use, so I guess I gotta. All right, I'm talking to myself here. So for my arrow, I'm gonna use one of these assets in here. I'll include a link to these assets in the description. They can be found on itch.io. They're called 16 by 16 RPG item pack, and it's a free download, so you're fine to download it. For my arrow, I'm actually going to use this little spear here. So I'm going to pull that into the world. Make sure it's 16 by 16. I'm going to put it so that its sorting layer is default, so that it sorts properly. Let's call this one arrow. And I'm going to add a few components to this. We'll add a rigid body 2D with no gravity. It's important that you set collision detection to continuous so that it doesn't jump over anything. Start awake, I'm going to have it be never sleep. Interpolate, I'm going to have it extrapolate. And constraints, I'm going to freeze its rotation on the z-axis. Oh, no, okay. I just made a mistake. I've been working in 3D lately, and so I forgot about... I'm used to Y being up, but in 2D, Y is up, but it's not the rotation that you want to rotate it on. So back here in my projectile ability script, I need to change this from facing rotation being a Y rotation to being a Z rotation. All right, cool. Save that. And then back in Unity here, there's a problem with using the this as my arrow. And the problem is it's not rotated to point to the right immediately. If you are unaware, when you use ATAN as your way to find out what the area, or what the, good lord, I can't think today, what the angle is, ATAN returns in a radian value, and radian values start with 0 to the right and then go around. So this needs to be rotated a bit. So in order to do that, I'm going to make a new empty game object, and I'm going to call this one arrow, and I'm going to make my other arrow a child of it, and then my rigid body 2D is going to go on the actual arrow itself. So I'll just remove this component and re-put it on here. I am a little out of practice here, guys. Apologies for that. So gravity scale 0. You could add some linear drag to this if you wanted it to have some nice like slowdown over time. Let's just check what that's going to look like. Continuous, never sleep, extrapolate, and I don't want to freeze rotation on the z-axis. So for my arrow here, I want my rotation to be, first of all, I'm going to center it, and I want my rotation to be such that, not on Y, good lord, all this 3D stuff. I want my rotation to be such that it's facing to the right. So in this case, that's going to be either 225 or negative 135. Yeah. So I'm just going to put it at 225. All right. That's not too bad. It kind of, the weird side angle kind of jars with everything that we're doing here, but that'll be fine. I'm going to go into my prefabs. For my player, I'm going to make the arrow a child, or a prefab in the player. And then I can just delete this from the scene. Now I can use the prefab whenever I want to. And for my arrow ability, this is going to be part of the, there we go. So we got a game object now. Now the next thing I need to do is on my player, I need to set my current ability to be the dash in order to test it. So change my current ability. Let's save that and let's hit play. So it's left control I'm using. Okay, so I need to do rad to degrees. So if you can't tell, it's coming up with the radian value, and I thought it was radians that this took, but it doesn't. So I need to multiply this value by mathf.rad 2 degrees. which is 180 over pi, which changes it to be a degree value. All right, so let's save this and let's try it now. Way better. Now we just need them to instantiate and then move in the direction we want them to. Now this is actually a good test for me because I've taken so much time off. I forgot if I added the projectile in here. I think I did. I'm 90% certain I did. Because I made it part of the enemy, I think. Game scripts, room transfer. Maybe I didn't. If I didn't, it's not very long to do. So I'm going to make this a generic component. And we'll make this a projectile script. So C# script. And I'm going to call this generic projectile, just in case I want to make like a seeking projectile or something like that. So opening this up, what this is going to need to have is access to a rigid body. And it's going to need a function on create that, or I guess functions have to be on create, a function that sets its velocity. So I'm going to set this to have a serialized field, and this is going to be a private rigid body 2D, and I'm going to call this my rigid body, and I want a speed. So this speed should be a serialized field as well. I know, Yoda. My cat is very much wanting my attention. So we'll call this a private float my speed. And then I don't think I've talked about this specific tag, but you can force Unity to have a specific component on anything that has this script. And the tag for that is require component, and then you have to tell it the type of. And the type I want to require is a rigid body 2D. And then in my start method, I can say my rigid body is equal to get component rigid body 2D. And then it's not bad that you're doing this rigid connection, because this rigid connection will always have a rigid body. And if you don't have a rigid body on anything you attach this to, Unity will create one. I don't need my update. Instead, I'm going to create a public method here. So I'm going to call this public void setup. And this is going to take in a vector as an argument. And we'll call this movement direction. And then when we call setup, we're going to do my rigid body dot velocity is equal to move direction dot normalized times my speed. Cool. And make sure this is public so we can access it from our projectile ability. And also in our projectile ability here, I want to say that my generic projectile, and I'm going to call this temp, is equal to new projectile dot get component type of generic projectile. And then I want to say if temp exists, temp.setup, and I'm going to pass in the player facing direction. Cool. So yeah, let's try this out. Now, there's different ways that we can customize this, of course. So if I go into my player, I'm going to open up my arrow prefab. On my arrow here, in my scripts, for my generic components, I want to add the generic projectile. And I don't have to assign the rigid body, but I'm going to anyway. I'm going to give this a speed of, 5. And now there's some other things I can add to it. So I can add knockback. And the other tag is going to be enemy. I'm going to make this give a little bit of knockback. So let's say 0.2, and the knockback strength is going to be 0.5. I want this to do damage. Oh no, wait, is it damage I want, or is it damage? Damage on contact is what I want, not damage. So this is going to be deleted. And I'm going to add, good lord, damage on contact is what I want. Okay, and then damage on contact is going to require damage amount, and it's also going to require a trigger. So this is going to take a box collider 2D. That is a trigger that I will edit. I feel like I'm going really fast here. So if you guys feel like I'm going fast too, chime in, let me know. I haven't been very good about answering comments lately, but I will try to be better going forward. Like I said, I'll talk about all that in a video here pretty soon. I want this to be centered. Let's make the x 1.3 and the y 0.25. Cool. I hate it when I look down and see those ridiculous float values. All right, so let's see here. Let's test this out. Oh, I gave it way too much linear drag. So, okay, that's good to know. Let's go in here, take a look at our arrow. I gave it 10. Let's do 0.5. Okay, so let's test this now. That's kind of weird. I also need to give him a lifetime and a destroy on contact. So let me go back into my arrow here and into my generic components. Okay, I've got destroy over time. So let's give this destroy over time. And the amount of time I want it to last is 1 second. And disable collider for fixed time, flash. Add to player value, animator controller. Where is the destroy on contact? I thought I had that in here. Maybe I don't. I should make a destroy on contact. I'm not going to do that right this instant. I just want to test this. We're going to be adding some actual UI for this and other abilities soon. All right, so they're destroying over time. So let's go take a look at my little enemy I've got over here. Look at that. All right, cool. So we've added our arrow back in. That's a super boring arrow to use, though. One more thing. I just want to do another change. Let's do our speed as 10. I have a tendency to either double or cut things in half when I'm playing around with values. So let's see here. That feels better. Now there's pooling that I can do to make this better. As it is right now, it's kind of eating up a bunch of garbage collection, but that's something that we can talk about later. And I honestly don't think it's going to be that bad unless you've got somebody who can do like 1 million actions per second. I don't think it's going to be that bad. So there we go. We've got our arrow ability back in. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the description down below, or comments down below rather. You can follow me on Twitter to find out when I post new videos. I'm going to be talking a lot more on Twitter coming up. And yeah, I hope everybody out there has themselves a wonderful day.